Greta Thunberg, who came to the UK this week to lead a climate strike in Bristol, tweeted about the Heathrow decision. "Heathrow third runway ruled illegal over climate change," she quoted. "Imagine when we all start taking the Paris Agreement into account." But apparently there's a new teenager in town. She has a lot of what Greta has: a social media profile, a loyal following, a last name that Americans and Brits don't really know how to pronounce. And she works for the dark side. Naomi Seibt is, according to the media at least, the anti-Greta, the teenager who thinks climate change alarmism is nonsense. Here's a clip of her from her most recent video.
The world is not ending because of climate change. In fact, 12 years from now, we will still be around, casually taking photos on our iPhone 18s, tweeting about the current president on Twitter, and ranting about the latest celebrity gossip. However, we are currently being force-fed a very dystopian agenda of climate alarmism that tells us that we as humans are destroying the planet, and that the young people especially have no future, that the animals are dying, that we are ruining nature.
She's had significant coverage this week that's seen her YouTube channel double in size. Vast numbers of people who only last week were all saying how stupid it was that climate alarmists were having a 17-year-old girl as a spokesperson, suddenly highly enthusiastic about having this 19-year-old girl as a spokesperson. Only last year, a columnist on the Heartland Institute website was saying this about Greta Thunberg. "There's a reason that we don't look to teenagers for guidance on fraught issues of public policy. With very rare exceptions, think say of the philosopher John Stuart Mill, who was a child prodigy, kids have nothing interesting to say to us. They just repeat back what they've been told by adults or other children with less nuance and maturity." So obviously the Heartland Institute won't be praising or supporting the presentation of Naomi Seibt as a climate spokesperson, because she's just a kid. Except that, by some mechanism not entirely clear, Naomi Seibt is now being supported promotionally and financially by the Heartland Institute. And if she's being described by the media as the anti-Greta, you have to think that it's the association with the Heartland Institute that's probably one of the reasons for that. Seibt herself says that she doesn't like being described as that. It's not about being anti-Greta. She prefers to describe herself as pro-human. That said, she doesn't exactly discourage the comparison. Her Twitter profile says, "I don't want you to panic. I want you to think." And her picture has the words, "How dare you," alongside. And good luck to her, because remember, I support free speech. And any teenager being put in the position that she has now been is going to get a huge amount of flack. And I hope she can deal with that. If you watch her earlier videos before the Heartland Institute entered the scene, she seems a perfectly authentic young person with a point of view. Reminds me a bit of Lauren Chen, for those who know her. She used to be known as Roaming Millennial, a young, attractive, right-of-centre YouTube commentator, well worth watching. That said, with no reflection on Naomi as a person whatsoever, I don't think this will fly very far once the initial stir has passed, just judging it from a change-making or a brand-building exercise. Put all of your feelings pro or anti about the two of them to one side, and let's look at this completely objectively as far as we can. Why did Greta catch on? She looks younger than she is, so she has the innocence of childhood working for her. She marries that with speaking very bluntly to powerful people, which people find to be pretty compelling. She doesn't try to be an intellect. Whenever she's asked, she says, "Don't listen to me, listen to the scientists," which is a very well-judged response. And she has come demonstrably to represent a constituency, young people who are scared for their future. It may be a minority, but it's a sizable minority. Her presence in Bristol this week seen a pretty large turnout because a lot of young people idolise her, and that's because they feel she's standing up for them. If you take that at face level as a marketing proposition, it's immensely powerful. And she shows huge maturity beyond her years in how she pulls it off. Now, you can be successful without having to be the same thing but in reverse. but you won't be anything like as successful. Because let's be clear, almost nobody has had the success of Greta Thunberg. That's just a fact. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. So Naomi is slightly older, but comes across as much older, more mature. Really, she's a young adult. So already she's not the anti-Greta because she's a young adult with a point of view. Secondly, she puts forward the standard anti-climate change case expounded by the Heartland Institute. Whereas Greta says, don't listen to me, I'm just a child, listen to the scientists, which undermines one of the common criticisms made of her from people who say she's being manipulated by the adults and they write her speeches for her. Naomi sounds like she's rehearsing the Heartland Institute's standard talking points. For instance, she asks if researchers have considered the immense impact that the sun has on the climate in comparison to CO2 emissions. So on the one hand, you have Greta saying, listen to the scientists. On the other, you have Naomi wondering if this community of climate scientists might have forgotten to take account of that enormous big bright thing up in the sky. And that makes her sound arrogant, naive, and she's probably neither of those things left to her own devices. But it plays into that earlier criticism that I already mentioned. They just repeat back what they've been told by adults with less nuance and maturity. May not be true, may not be fair, but it's how it appears. And thirdly, she doesn't represent a constituency. Young people her age who dislike what Greta Thunberg stands for, they just ignore her. They just don't take part in school strikes. They get on with whatever it is they want to do. It doesn't occur to them that they need someone to speak for them. But I rather think that in the rush to embrace a wider audience, taking on an official role as the anti-Greta of the Heartland Institute, she will end up sounding scripted and disconnected from the audience that she might otherwise appeal to if she were given free rein. She'll be the novelty figure for a while, invited to a bunch of conferences, and then it will pass. Because the Heartland Institute is sponsoring her not to talk to their existing audience, because they do that themselves, but to reach out to young people. And just having the Heartland words through the mouth of a however powerful young speaker won't on its own deliver that. So I don't think Greta is going to be unduly worried about this phenomenon. And if you're on the skeptic side of this debate, I can't honestly see why you'd suddenly be getting excited about this reasonably unsubtle copycat operation. In the meantime, my best wishes to Naomi Seibt. If she can break out of the Greta-defined role, then maybe she can use the Kickstart to build her own distinctive platform. And if her brand is going to be intelligent skepticism, I hope she doesn't forget to apply it to all the sources of information that she comes across.